Thank you for completely destroying my intro. But that's what I was expecting. Come to IglooConf, they said. It's going to be fun, they said. And here I am. So first of all, I want to say hello and thank you so much for coming to this session. I am, for the first time in my career, fighting a session on quantum computing. You're here. You could have been in the quantum computing. But then again, you might be in both. That's why I don't do quantum computing. So I need to get one thing out of the way first. This session is not designed to make people upset or uncomfortable. And I am not kidding. It's not designed to do that, but that has been known to happen. So consider yourself warned. It's not my point, but I am going to talk about a number of things that are kind of contentious and are kind of, they mean things. And they mean different things to different people. The name of this session, The Untruthful Art, it's a nod to one of the most famous people in the visualization space, Alberto Cairo. He's written a book called The Truthful Art. And I almost had a coronary when he reached out on Twitter and said, well, I kind of like your title. I was pretty sure that he was going to rip me a new one, but he thought it was kind of cool. So The Untruthful Art, how to really mess with people's heads using data. So we live in the age of information. In 2023, 120 trillion gigabytes, that's 120 zettabytes, of data was actually created. I'm pretty sure that half of it is probably porn and spam, and the rest might be divided between TikTok, cat pictures, selfies, and maybe, just maybe, some kind of useful information. The jury is still out on the last one. How much of that information is true? Well, what is true anyway? How do we define truth? How do we measure truth? Kilos? Meters? How many meters of truth is something? Kind of a hard thing to do, right? The thing is, the world is simply too complex. It's too complex to specify what is actually really, really true. And in this world of complexity, there are ways to leverage this complexity, this challenge that is innate in information, to overload you with information, or push an agenda, or maybe even leverage outcomes. The only thing that is worse than getting played is getting played without you knowing it. People are predominantly visual. You can find a lot of stuff on the internet going, well, you have the visual learner, you have the auditive learner, you have the other learner. Don't. It's an oversimplification that we're not going to be dealing with, but most people tend to latch on to visual information. It makes sense. The whole adage that picture says more than 1,000 words, right? There's a reason for that. And have that in mind as we go through this. We're going to look at what does deception really look like, or what can it look like. We're going to see how do we spot foul play, and what makes the data visualization craft so dangerous? I mean, hey, how hard can it be and how dangerous can it be with a Power BI report? Yeah, funny you should ask. You might have seen the part comedic, part magician duo Penn and Teller. Penn put it this way, or Teller put it this way: nothing fools you better than the lie you tell yourself. This is key. My goal today is to show you this central tenet of visual trickery. That's you. You all are going to see exactly what you want to see. And if I have an idea of what that is, I can pretty much play you and get you to do most anything. So my name is Alexander. I come from, I don't know where East-West is. I come from Sweden. So sort of kind of the same weather, much easier language. I've been at this for close to 30 years. I was told yesterday that Zachary has CEO silver. This is data science gray. It's almost the same color, but not quite. I work for a company called Data Masterminds, and I have the best title ever. I'm a principal solutions architect. And if anybody has a clue what that is, let me know, because I don't. It's not quite as cool as senior technical fellow, but almost. And the people in here that know what I just referred to, say hi to Sami for me. I am a data platform MVP, which makes me a bit of an odd man out, because I am not used to be talking to predominantly dev and infrastructure people. But it's fine. We can spend time in these kinds of settings as well. I co-host a podcast called Need of Tech, and yes, for the people in this room, my age or older, that is the Doom game logo. And Doom is the best game ever. Yes? Yes? There we go. Always difficult with Finns. So let's kick off, and I want to introduce you to another Swedish person. This is Greta. Greta is angry. And she's angry, really. She's pissed. She's really pissed. She's got it into her head that there's something going on with the climate. And for some reason, she would kind of like to have people do something about it, preferably a government, but is she really on to something? Is the environment going to shit? Not everyone agrees. Not everyone agrees. So what do? Let's go look at the data, shall we? This was put on Twitter a couple of years back by the National Review, which is a very conservative news outlet of the US. The data is in Fahrenheit, but that doesn't really matter because the pattern is what we're looking at. As the tweet says, this is the only climate change chart you'll ever need to see. Boom, mic drop. There's no issues here. Clearly, it's just about a straight line. What are we whining on about? Well, this is a great starting point for this whole visual trickery thing. Because people that don't really acknowledge any climate change issues, they're going to go look at this and go, yeah, that was pretty much what I thought, and they're going to go back to whatever they just did. You see what you want to see, right? But there are a couple of issues here. One is the way that this is scaled. It's hard to see, but that's around 13.7 degrees centigrade. And if we were to look at what data actually looks like, slightly more zoomed in, this is what it looks like. And these are the global ocean average temperatures. Those are absolute numbers. That doesn't really tell us much. And also, it's averaged over the entire planet. I was never good with geography, but even I know that there are different bodies of water around the planet that actually differ in temperature. But hey, let's just do an average and go, nah, it's good. What if, well, that actually turns the number of tricks to 2. What if we look at the change of temperature over years? Oh dear. Those are the anomalies, or those are the changes. And if we look at the changes over time, I sort of kind of get an idea of why Greta is upset. She might actually be onto something here. I was considering calling this session not the Untruthful Art, but an hour with Fox News. And then I realized that if I even tried to do this in the US, I will probably, at best, not be allowed back in the US, and at worst, not ever be allowed to leave the US. With things like this, if you need to find someone that does unspeakable things to data, I highly recommend you to go look at Fox News. Percentage of Americans that identify as Christians has really plummeted. Just look at this graph. Well, okay, look at the scale. Yes, it's 12%, and that may or may not be a lot, but it's not this big of a change. It's a small change because they've messed with the y-axis. That's the y-axis. That's a great way to mess with people's conceptions. We can keep going. Look at this wonderful thing. What do we see? Job losses by quarter. It starts at 7 million and it goes straight to 15 million. It goes straight, What are we seeing here? What's wrong with this picture? You're going to hear that question a lot. Let's start with what's not there. The scales. They kind of have a point, right? But if there is no scales, you have no idea what you're looking at. But it gets better than that. This one, the x-axis, it's not equidistant. There is a huge difference between December 07, September 08, March 09, and suddenly we're in June 10. How did that happen? What do we do when we're concerned about a graph? We go find the data and we look at the data. This is me taking the exact same data, putting it into Power BI, and, well, to be fair, I tried to recreate this in Power BI, I couldn't. So this one is actually done in PowerPoint, because that is the only way that I can get these points to line up like Fox News did. And I'm reasonably well versed in Power BI. But if we actually look at the data, yeah, this is what it looks like when you plot it in a proper fashion. And as you can see, there is a bit of a gap over here between March 09 and June 10. It would be kind of sad if something were to hide there, wouldn't it? Well, we have the data, and if we put it in, and suddenly this is about as far from a straight line as you can possibly get. Could it possibly be that someone is trying to push an agenda? Nah, that would be too easy. I can show you a funny thing that happened in Sweden. So COVID is not funny at all. But the way that people treated data during the COVID pandemic is. What can we read from this graph? Well, we can see that the fatality rates per age group goes up and up and up and up, but you're good. As soon as you pass over 69, it's going to be awesome, because you're way less likely to die from COVID if you're age 70 and then it goes up again. Sorry, what? If that is what you want to see, that is what you are going to see. Because it has two different axes. Just because you can do this, don't. How about this gem? I have yet to find anyone who can tell me what the heck we're looking at. But it is, from a visualization perspective, correct visual, if you will. Just meh. Let's just skip that. How about this one? The Republican Party is backsliding towards authoritarianism, which is, by the way, a very difficult language for a word for someone who does not have English as his first language. We're back to, how do you measure authoritarianism? How do you measure democracy? How many meters of democracy do we need? What is an average length of democracy? We don't know. How the, insert expletive, do you even come up with this? But again, if you are a hardcore Democrat that absolutely hates the whole point of the Republican Party, you're going to look at this and go, yeah, I'd never liked those GOP people. And clearly here we have a graph that says, I'm right. Awesome, I'm going to use this. That's how these things are used. You see what you want to see, regardless of if the data is shit. We're just warming up. How about this one? And this one was taken from the World Inequity Report of 2017. So this is a pretty hefty tome of data. This is not something that somebody just whipped up one Tuesday morning in an office. No, this has been peer-reviewed and all kinds of weird stuff been done to it. What is the problem here? Well, what's happening over there? This is an axis. It's even the x-axis. Everybody's happy. Here we go from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That's linear. Really? No! Just no! Do not change your scales mid-stride. And if you, for some unfathomable reason, feel you need to, point it out. Because otherwise you are pretty much lying to your audience. We don't like that. So, first of all, look at the scaffolding. The scaffolding is all the stuff that's around the graph. So the scales, the numbers, all those things. Important stuff. Second, the chart axis should almost always start at 0. Because if it doesn't start at 0, that means that whatever you're looking at is suddenly relative. May or may not be what you want to achieve. And finally, you do not change scales midstream, because if you do, I'll find you. And you're going to get to talk to Mr. Polar Bear. And nobody wants that. Then we're going to go into the second part, which is cherry picking. How many people in this room have seen Star Wars? Okay, this is good. I've been in rooms where like 4 people, and clearly we had an issue. But that's fine. So cherry picking is the art of taking a bit of data, tossing out the crap that really does not say what I wanted to say, and then use that to drive home my point. Is Darth Vader a good leader? Yes or no? This is cherry picking. Let's put that into another context. Let's look at the UK. This is the UK national debt as a percentage of the gross domestic product. The UK is on everybody's lips these days for Brexit. Things are not going well. I mean, just look at this. The debt has tripled. What are they doing in the UK? What's wrong with this picture? Well, it starts at 1995 and it goes to 2016. I'm pretty sure that there was something happening in the UK before 1995. There may or may not have happened something in the UK since 2016. Would it possibly be that there might be more to this story? Nah, unlikely. But what do? Well, we go and dig out the data. This is what the data looks like, and who would have known? Again, it's not the truth, not entire truth. This was the visual you just saw. And this is what the data says. Most of you were not around when there was a bit of a war on. So yes, things have changed. Rick might have been around, I don't know. So I'm now going to show you something that is just, this is so nuts that I have to read verbatim. This came out on Twitter a while back, and this is from a man called Bjørn Lomborg. He is Danish, and he is a climate denier of epic proportions. He put this out and says that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the US, clearly shows that there is no global warming. The scary part is there is nothing wrong with this graph. This is EPA data. This is absolutely correct EPA data. And it's a report by the EPA that you can freely download from the internet. Now, Andrew Dessler, who is a professor of atmospheric sciences at Texas A&M, he saw this and went, huh? This is weird. And he dug into it. So what we're looking at is heat waves. So what is a heat wave? Well, the 1930s were hot in the US, but they were not that hot. The 2020s had some pretty serious heat waves as well, but they didn't even show up. Okay, are we living on the same planet? So this is referring to the heat wave index. And it's a good thing you're all sitting down, because I'm going to give you the definition of a heat wave index. Okay, a heat wave index counts the occurrence of a four-day heat waves of temperatures exceeding 1 in a 10-year recurrence. Can anyone explain to me what I just said? No, that's the issue. They're taking something completely arbitrary and then plotting that. So what Andrew Dessler did was he took the data and instead he changed the definition of a heat wave to something more reasonable, counting the number of hot days. And what do you know? This is the number of hot days. It seems to be going up. But there's actually another trickery in this. This is the United States. I know that some Americans really don't agree to this, but there are other parts of the world outside of the US. And suddenly if you add in the entire world, oh dear. Yeah, Greta might be onto something here. Just saying. What can we learn here? Well, look for the agenda. The whole point of data telling a story is just utter incomplete bullshit. Sorry, but that's the way it is. No data will ever tell you anything on its own. My bag's not going to tell you anything. My data is not going to tell you anything. My data is just going to reflect what I want the data to say. So always look for the agenda. Consider the responders. Who am I asking a question to? That is going to impact the information that I get back. It's obvious, but we still fall for it. And always try to examine the base data. If you can't find the base data, that's a good indicator that someone is really trying to mess with you. Keep going. Let's look at comparisons. There's this classical way of saying that you should not compare apples to oranges, or in this case, apples to trombones. And I'm going to show you a couple of creative ways to do exactly that. And if someone in here is wondering, which might be the case, that is a military 6-valve trombone from 1886. Just so we have that out of the way. Let's start with the UK again. UK is fantastic. What are we looking at here? Southwest UK, 2,491 years. The East Midlands, 1,904 years. What do you think I'm looking at? That is the average years of canceled Netflix subscriptions that it would cost to buy an average house. So it's kind of expensive in London because it's going to take you 4,000 years of not looking at Netflix to buy a house. The data is correct, but it's also completely useless. Let's go to the US and look at a graph that shows the most dangerous city in the US. My God. Chicago is really dangerous. Baltimore, just slightly less. How do you measure danger? We're back to the unit of danger. What you're looking at is a lot called fluff. This is cool to look at, but there's a lot of stuff around here that is just designed for your mind to look at it and go, this looks cool. So let's take out the fluff. This is what it should look like. What are we missing?
Numbers.
Scale, numbers, axes. Indeed. So this is actually the number of homicides in 2019 by city. Do we have an issue with this? Yes, we do. Anybody ever been to Baltimore or Chicago? Then you might know that there is a bit of a difference in size between the different the cities. Chicago is quite a lot bigger than Baltimore, so we cannot compare the absolute numbers. Well, it didn't stop someone for doing exactly that, but it kind of skews the whole thing. So we do a comparison instead of absolute numbers, we divide the number of homicides by the population. Suddenly it looks like this. And if we put in the red, coloring the red bands again, it looks like this. So yep, Baltimore is kind of a tricky place to be, but Chicago, nah, it's not that bad. I went to Chicago a couple years back for a Star Wars convention. It was me and 39,000-ish other Star Wars fans. It was glorious. I'm still alive. So I'm going to show you, for some reason, another example from the UK, how this can be used. This is a screen grab from the BBC. Would you say, Rick, that the BBC is a reputable news outlet? Yes, I would agree. It's about as far from Fox News as you can possibly get. This is the BBC. This is the BBC that did the visuals, and we can see the different hospitalization for COVID. And here we have Wales. It went down, it went up. Northern Ireland, oh wow, they had a lot of cases in Northern Ireland compared to Wales and compared to England. Or did they now? Yes, I can hear what you're thinking, and it is correct. Look at the scales. The information is there, but if you want to see something else, you can easily do so, because the scales are different in what's known as this small multiples. Danger with Robinson, danger. Let's look at revenue. I am looking at a pretty hefty bonus this year because this is my revenue, my sales. It's going up, 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 up and away. I am going to be your rich man. Kind of like that. Do we see any issues with this? If I own Microsoft, then these numbers might make sense. No, I'm not owning Microsoft. So don't worry. There is something else going on here. Well, that is cumulative revenue. Come on, who would actually count cumulative revenue? How would you get a cumulative line to go down? Yeah, that would be a bad day. So no company would ever do this kind of graphs, right? Why would you measure the cumulative effects? Anybody own an Apple device? Yeah, right, because this is actually cumulative data. So it's right there in your face. It's being done, not necessarily today, but just about. So what can we learn here? Do compare apples to apples. You can compare apples to just about anything else, but it doesn't make sense. And if you do, compare to what? My cat, well, let me rephrase that. I am the world's best speaker. You should have seen Glenn's face. Compared to my cat, I am the world's best speaker. I'm not wrong in that statement, it just won't make any sense. So think about how you compare things. And always consider absolute versus cumulative increase. That was the fun part of this session. Let's look at the not so fun parts. Well, there are going to be a lot of fun parts here, but just be aware that this is where it's going to change. Causation, correlating causation. What does this word mean? Let's start with causation, the action of causing something. I hit my foot on something, it will hurt, I will scream. That's causation. This is correlation. In 2013, Britney Spears released a song called Work Bitch. And as you can see, the unemployment rate fell. That is not correlation, that is correlation, not causality. I'm pretty sure that she did not create the downward movement of unemployment. Make sense? Okay. So, if you want to, you can correlate just about anything. And there are few sites better than this than the Spurious Correlation by Tyler Vigen. He's a data science guy out of the US. You can correlate just about anything. For instance, the consumption of cheese and the total revenue generated by golf courses each year. It correlates, but I can guarantee you that there is no causal link. There's nothing connected between these. This is what I'm talking about. That is either a very, very fat cat or a cat that is actually not a cat at all because it's an alien with a very large gravitational footprint, or someone hit that pole and the cat just went, oh, I'm going to go up here. Correlation, causation. That's fun. I'm going to show you something that is not fun. This is glyphosate. Anybody use Roundup in their garden? Yeah, it's pretty common. So glyphosate was brought to the market in 1974 by the Monsanto Corporation in the United States. And they have had some pretty creative ways to market it. Like they told people that it's safer than table salt. And essentially non-toxic to mammals. Absolutely super safe. The debate about Roundup being carcinogenic or not is still very much raging today, and I'm not going to put my fingers into that because I don't have the requisite skills to say that. But just to give you an idea, the World Health Organization in 2015, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, they classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic in humans. But the same year, the European Food Safety Authority said the substance is unlikely to pose a carcinogenic threat to humans. Can you just decide, please? That's not how science works. So we don't know. We do not know. So what if we do this? We take thyroid cancer incidence in the US, and we add that to glyphosate, and why don't we throw in genetically engineered soy and corn in the whole mix as well? What are we looking at? Correlation. There are a couple of things that stand out here. For instance, the need to go to minus on one of the scales just in order to apply enough force for this line to fit. To paraphrase a movie, with a proper amount of force, this boot will fit up your posterior. With a proper amount of force, I can make any line fit any other line. That doesn't mean it's right, but hey, it's a graph, and graphs are by design always true. Yes? So why does this matter? It matters partly because of this man. This is a British physician whose name is Andrew Wakefield. He posted in 1998, or in the Lancet, which is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, he created an article that linked the MMR vaccine that we give to small children to autism. That has been completely torn to shreds. There is no scientific evidence for anything in that article to be true. It's been removed from the Lancet. He has been struck from the medical registrar. He is no longer allowed to practice medicine in the United Kingdom. That should tell you something about his scientific practices. Doesn't really matter, because the global anti-vaccine movement, they latched onto this like a tick on a dog, and they saw the fantastic opportunity to really push an agenda and to sow distrust. Because we can take this information that I just showed you and we can compare completely harmless things together like this. Autism and organic food sales. We see a correlation, and as the question is, the real cause of increasing autism prevalence. It's organic food sales. Most of us are going to go, yeah, no, it doesn't really work that way. But what if? What if? What if you have a child? Consider a couple with a child that has just been diagnosed with autism. That is a completely life-changing event. Your life, as you knew it up to this point, is over. Nothing you knew yesterday will apply today or the rest of that child's life. Everything has changed. Why did this happen to you? Why did this happen to your child? Could you have done something different? Is this your fault? Are you a bad parent? These are the questions that instantly come into the head of people with this situation. What if you go online and you start researching this? You don't know, you try to find some information and you find this or something like this and you go, oh shit, it's about the organic food sales. How is this even allowed? This cannot stop. And you grab a pitchfork, some tar, and off to the races you go to start protesting organic food sales. It's not far from there to people really getting hurt. It's not fun and games anymore when you start to really mess with people's minds. What can we learn from this? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You have a responsibility as someone who does data visualizations to always think of what are you trying to say? How will this be interpreted? We can always say, well, we just gave them the data. It's up to the people looking at it to make their own assumptions and their own conclusions. Yes, it's true, but it's also pretty crappy. Scale will always define the curve. By messing with the scale, I can probably get a curve to fit on top of something else. And as soon as someone whips out a scale that requires you to have minus 10,000 tons of glyphosate, we have an issue. Because it's kind of hard to have minus anything if you have a quantitative piece of data. And say this after me, correlation does not equal causation. I have a number of tattoos. That might be my next one. Just haven't decided where to put it. Maybe a perfect tramp stamp, or maybe on my chest. I don't know. We'll see when it's time for the next IglooConf. We're going to go in.
Do it today, we pay for it.
I was afraid you'd say that. We're going to go into the fifth one. This is purposeful deception, or as a friend put it, lying through your teeth. We're back to Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called this week, and this gem was put out by the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and I'm terribly sorry if I butchered the name. This is the leading party in India. So the truth of the hike in petroleum prices, the percentage increase of petrol prices. I'm sorry, what? Again, I am not good with math. There are people in this room that are very good with math. I'm not one of them. Really? We're back to fluff again. There's a lot of stuff on this picture that does not convey information. So what if we take out the fluff? Okay, it's a bar chart. We can keep going. We take out the bars as well. And suddenly, 71.41 and 80.7. I have issues with this. So if we take the actual numbers that were on this picture all the time, and we put it back into the fluff, voila. This is what it should have looked like. This is the ruling party of India. India is kind of a big deal. And they are putting out this kind of stuff? I have questions, quite a few questions. But hey, there's more. How about this one? Housing unit prices in the United States. There is no shortage of housing in the US. That's what this shows, right? It has not been an issue from the 90s onwards, essentially, because there is bound to be somewhere to live. Remember when I showed you the data about global average temperatures? This is average over the United States. Is there a difference between, say, New York City or Armpit, Colorado? Do people want to live in New York City as opposed to Armpit, Colorado? I've never been to Armpit, maybe. But you can't do this. You cannot average over such a large area. It just won't make sense unless you want to drive home the point that this is the way it looks. It's not wrong, but the interpretations will open up for making things wrong. It's essentially doing this. I mean, the whale in the image is much closer to the camera than the background. That could have been a polar bear, but I didn't find the picture quick enough. Now let's talk about maps. Maps are kind of difficult because the human mind has a very weird relationship to maps. This is the United States. And the United States, as the name implies, consists of a number of states. Let's look at the 2012 election. I am dumb, but I'm not dumb enough to touch 2020 or 2024 or any of those elections with a 10-foot pole, because we're back to I'm going to be shot somewhere. I prefer not to be that. 2012 saw the incumbent president, Barack Obama, a Democrat, be challenged by the Republican candidate Mitt Romney. And if we were to paint in the different states, red for Republican and blue for Democrat, we're going to see this. Yeah, okay, it's a fairly even split. Your eyes are going to go, wow, about maybe 45, 55%. So, okay, no strange things. Turns out that the states are actually built up by counties. So let's go down one level and look at what the counties vote. Holy crap. That's a lot of red. So we know that Barack Obama won. But looking at this picture, as a Republican, you open up your paper in the morning and you see this, and then the narrative that the election was stolen. I would kind of agree. I mean, dude, there's a lot of red here. Why didn't Mitt Romney win? Really? We're back to I see what I want to see. So why is this? Well, it turns out that land don't vote. People do. And if you look at the number of people in the different states, there's a crap ton of people in California. Florida, which was surprisingly turned blue that election, there's a lot of people there as well. Texas, it was red as it always has been, and all the way down to Wyoming. What do we have in Wyoming? Cattle. We have a lot of cattle. No, I'm not talking about the people. The actual things that go moo. They don't vote. If the cattle had voted, that would be something completely different. So, taking this together, that's what it looks like. 64 million voted for Democrat and 51 million voted for the Republicans, i.e., it was correct. But it's easy to show how you can make a narrative saying that, well, the Republicans had their elections stolen from them. We're going to stay in Florida. Anybody ever been to Florida? Kind of a nice place. It's not unlike Helsinki yesterday when it comes to temperature. Or my hotel room, actually. That was also very Florida-like, but I digress. This came out in Reuters. Reuters, just like the BBC, is a pretty serious news outlet. And in 2005, Florida enacted the Stand Your Ground law. Just a quick recap. Stand Your Ground is a law that gives anyone the inviolable right to shoot someone dead if they feel threatened. This means that if any one of you were to come up to me and behave in a way that I find threatening, you may not be threatening, but I find you threatening, I pull a gun and I shoot you dead, I'm okay with that. That's what the Stand Your Ground law says. The whole point of it was to kind of make people think twice before they went up to someone on the street and mugged them. And as you can see, the law went into effect in 2005, and the number of deaths fell. Or did they? Really? That's a higher number than that. Because they turned the damn scale upside down. Why would you do that? So that's what it should look like. That's what it should look like. And who would have known? If you give people the right to shoot people dead, they're going to do it. Even I thought That was kind of clear, right? We're going to go back to the UK. This one just blows my mind. So, all the way from COVID, the UK government has been really, really, really good at giving information about the COVID pandemic. And every week there was the weekly COVID-19 surveillance report. And it has been identical since pretty much the start of the pandemic to the end of the pandemic. And one of the pages, I can't remember exactly which one, but you can look it up, contains this map. This is what's known as a heat map to show the number of new cases in the country of the United Kingdom. Week 40 of 2020, I think, they changed the data set slightly because they added the seasonal flu to it. So it turned into the weekly COVID-19 and seasonal flu surveillance report. And that was also the week that they finally broke COVID. Finally. Because as you can see, much fewer cases. No. No. There is no mention of a change in the key between these 2 weeks. None. The only way that you can see this is by looking at the reports side by side. They are not lying to you, but they sure as hell are not telling the whole truth. This is not okay in any way, shape, or form. Do not ever do this to your audience, your colleagues, your clients, your pets. Just don't. What can we learn? Well, people have a limited attention span. Squirrel! That's how we work as human beings. Always be careful with maps because we tend to ascribe a value relative to the size of the area. Remember, land don't vote, people do. And also, visuals are extremely powerful. We see what we want to see. So my goal was to show you how easy it is to trick yourself with data and with visuals. When I started building this session out a couple of years back, I wasn't expecting to find quite as much hilarious examples that I did. I mean, I spent months just looking at the internet and laughing my ass off. It was great. Until it wasn't. Because when I came to realize just how many people who daily fall for this, they're being deceived by information that's just in any piece of information, any paper, anything out there. Every day you can pick up something and there will be something in there that's just not true. It wasn't funny anymore because I know data reasonably well. I get tricked. How about the normal people that don't spend an inordinate amount of time looking at data? Well, you're up shit creek. The question then becomes, are we doomed? Are we completely screwed as a species? No. No, I don't think so. Unless we choose to be. Willful ignorance is rampant, but I still think it's possible to make people to be able to sort of kind of to think for themselves. Because what if the solution is about as obvious as it's rare, right? It's called data literacy. We know automatically how to interpret a red light. Red means stop. Come to Amsterdam, red means dead. Do not walk into the bike lanes, just don't. We know that we should not buy things from a guy in an alley going, I have things for you. We just, no. We know that we should not eat yellow snow. We know these things. How do we know these things? We weren't born knowing these things. We were taught at an early age. What if we take this common sense, that's anything but common, and we teach our kids? To be fair, the people in this room, we're too old. We're done. Yes, we can absolutely learn, but that's not the problem. We are not the problem. Our kids are. the people coming in the next generation, those are the big problems, because they are going to look at the information out there and take it for granted, take it as truth. So what if we could just teach this concept in school? What if we can stem the flow of disinformation by upping data literacy just slightly? There are a lot of great books that I can highly recommend you to go through. It's a deep rabbit hole, but by all means, go down it. Don't blame me for finding a new passion. It's awesome. There's so much written on this specific subject. During this 50 minutes, we've seen examples of everything from just about innocent mistakes to lies. What can we conclude? We can conclude that with great Power BI comes great responsibility. Sorry, I had to sneak Power BI in there. And I cannot stress this enough. As a data visualization professional or someone doing anything with data visualization, you have a responsibility. Do not take that lightly. People see exactly what we want to see. I can figure out what you think and take that into account, and I can create a narrative that is going to play straight into your preconceptions. Anybody remember Cambridge Analytica? Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And it kind of worked. I think increasing data literacy is absolute key. Without it, we are doomed. And I think data literacy is essentially the only thing that's between us and certain doom. I want you to become more data literate. I want you to help people around you to become more data literate. I don't think we're doomed just yet. Be observant. Be curious. Be literate. Maybe, just maybe, you will not get burned. My name is Alexander, and I thank you so much for this.